So this is my third video on composition in landscape photography. This time I only have 3 tips for you, and I want to remind you that these tips should be thought of more as tools which you can use to emphasize either your story or whatever you want to show in your landscape photo. So the first tip of this video is framing, and you frame your picture to emphasize your subject or object, whatever you're taking picture of, your focal point. In this picture here, you can see how I have used the light on the trees and the trees themselves to frame the castle here in the middle. Arguably, the tree trunk up here, or the branch, is a bit too dark, so it takes a bit of attention up here, but beside that, it's an obvious example of classical framing. So in this picture, we don't have like a classical framing, and I am not the one to use framing too much in my photos, or actually I am, because I usually try to go for some kind of like natural framing with especially clouds. And this is one example where we have the clouds here in the top. I have darkened them a little bit beside actually having this line S-curve going through the photo. I also have the upper part here dark, so it kind of reflects in the lower part here, which is also darker, which puts a lot of emphasis on the boats here in the middle. Same here, we of course have the mountains that frames the valley, which is our main subject or object. And then we have the ground here, which is not lit by the sunbeams coming through the valley. And then we have the clouds up here. There's actually a few places in these clouds where I've covered up a few holes as to not bring too much attention to the frame. I just wanted to frame the picture. So here we have the church again, and same as the picture with the boats, I have darkened the clouds up here a little bit as to frame the picture. They are also darkened out here, so it's kind of like a vignetting. And that's exactly what a vignetting does. It frames the picture as to bring more attention to the middle part of the picture. And if you, as I often do, go for a strong central composition, then a vignetting often hugely benefits the picture. So here a photo from Lauterbrunnen in Switzerland. Arguably not my best picture, but here I have used the trees in the foreground and the trees down here and the trees along the edge of the valley here to frame the entire valley and the town down here. So Brentford Church in England, again with the other church picture, I have darkened the clouds up here in the top as to bring more emphasis on the church. And here the last picture from Dunyandi in Iceland. I've done the same with the long exposure clouds up here in the top, where I have darkened them down a little bit to make a framing of the photo. So my second tip is to turn your object or subject the right way. And what do I mean by that? Well, I basically mean that the perceived front of your subject or object should be turned into the photo. So here come some examples. Here, the Black Church in Iceland. As you can see, what I would say is the front of the church is over here with a door, obviously. And here it's turned out of the photo. And to me, that creates unease. Like, why is it turned out of the photo? What am I supposed to lead from the church being turned out of the photo? It's the same as having a face turned out of the photo. You want to know what's out there and not in the photo. So it creates a bit of like unease. So this is the right framing. This is how I actually took the photo. So we have the front of the church pointing into the photo. Another example here from our favorite plane crash in Iceland. We have, of course, the front of the plane, and here turned out of the photo. It creates some kind of unease, like the right part of the photo doesn't really add to the photo at all. I could actually crop it over here. Now, if I do place the plane in the right side of the photo, so as it's pointing into the photo, it creates more balance and it becomes more pleasing to the eye to look at. So here we have a cute little puffin, and the same goes for subjects. In this case, it's looking out of the photo. I would say the right part of the photo doesn't add anything to the photo. Now, on the contrary, if the face is pointing into the photo, it creates way more balance in the photo, and it's more pleasing to look at. And here from the Isle of Skye in Scotland, this little lady here is looking out of the picture and not into the picture and into the focal point of the frame. And it creates unease, and as if she's like detached from the story of the photo. It looks weird. Now, I have of course made this as an example because this is the original photo and she's looking into the frame. But I made this photo as to give an example of what I mean, having the subject or the object look into the picture. So here it looks weird. Here it makes sense. Same goes for this one. We have Sophie and myself pointing our backs towards each other and to the frame, and she's like looking out here and I'm looking like out here, even though the main attraction of the photo is the hill down here. But of course, when I took the photo, we were turned like this, just using a bit of Photoshop trickery to emphasize my point. So here we are both looking into the frame. Our direction is adding to where the viewer is supposed to look. So the third tip, and something I do a lot, is use negative space. And you use negative space also to emphasize your focal point. So here's the first example. Try not to look at the dot on the screen. It's very hard not to. I'm not saying that you can't, but your eye goes straight towards the dot. You even want to maybe scratch it off. That is the effect of negative space. You have this white blanket and then you have this one dot, which your eyes are just drawn to it because it breaks the order in front of you. So from here, the top of Snæfellsjökull, I was up here with Oso Photography, and he was flying around with his DJI Inspire, and I took this photo, and we have the ocean here in the background, and it turns into some clouds, and we have the sunset. But even though you have these strong colors and even contrasty colors in the blue and in the orange, and you have the horizon line, it's so hard not to look at the drone, even though it's so small in the photo. Your eyes are just drawn to the drone. You see it almost instantaneously. Same goes for the horses here. It's the only thing within the frame worth looking at, and also the most contrasty part of the frame. So of course we have a little bit of the background. It's some horses running, and we have mountain and hills here in the background. And I've framed it during this snowstorm so that I only have the horses and the hill here in the background. And everything is about the horses because it's basically the only thing you see in the frame. So here there's a bit more in the frame. Maybe your eyes first go to the seagull here in the middle, or maybe they go to the mountains here. And the fun thing with this phenomenon is we had this hole in the clouds just coming from the right and just moving over here to the left. And we had these mountains popping out. So I was like, okay, let's try and photograph it without zooming all the way in, but having all these clouds making a negative space and adding to the focal point of the picture, which is, of course, the mountains underneath the clouds. And then we had a seagull flying into the picture. If it adds to the picture, I'm not so sure yet. I might remove it. I'm not sure if your eyes are battling of going to the seagull or going to the mountains. So yeah, the church again. And we have, of course, all the negative space up here in the clouds. Even though there's a lot of texture in the clouds, the church still breaks this big amount of negative space. And here even more emphasized during, well, it's not a snowstorm, it was just like a big whiteout. And we only really have the stone fence here, a stone wall, and the church. And you simply cannot not look at it. This is where your eye goes, directly to the church. Same effect here from Brentford Church. Even though the fog actually snuffs out a lot of the details in the church, you still have a very strong silhouette of it, and your eyes simply go there, and the negative space adds to you looking at the church. Here from the Faroe Islands, even though there are actually some texture and some details here in the foreground, it could also work as negative space, both here and above the islands. But your eyes are just drawn directly to the islands. Of course, this is also what I talked about in the first video, that your eyes are attracted to high contrast areas. And you can use negative space to emphasize those high contrast areas. Same goes for here, high contrast area, but you cannot help yourself from looking at the person walking here. Of course, you have the leading line with the footsteps, and it is negative space, even though it's full of texture both in the clouds and in the sand here, but you just can't help yourself looking at the person walking here. And that is the negative space, just emphasizing, well, both the story that the world is big, but also adding to the focal point. Same goes for here. This picture wouldn't be the same if I had cropped it here in the middle. The big amount of empty space up here in the sky adds so much to the focal point here, which are the mountains with the two clouds on top of them. It is hard not to look at them. Negative space can also add to the story. So we have this waterfall coming out of these low-hanging clouds. And yeah, I could definitely crop the picture here in the middle and fill out the frame. But I would argue that this photo is interesting because I didn't crop it. You wonder what is up here behind the low-hanging clouds. You want to know, and you want to know what's up there in the negative space. If the negative space wasn't there, you would just be like, okay, it's a waterfall coming out of some low-hanging clouds. But the negative space and the clouds adds another dimension to the photo. So those were the 3 tips. I hope you learned something. I have a few news coming up in the near future in regards to workshops and tutorials. So if you haven't subscribed to my newsletter yet, there's a link down below. So I know a lot of you are probably not going to watch all my videos, and I will announce a few things through the videos, but if I can send you an email, that just makes everything way easier for you and for me. So when you subscribe to my newsletter, I will also send you an in-field workflow, which is the workflow I kind of use when I am out making landscape photos. Now, obviously this workflow is not a complete how to do it, but if you do need some inspiration or want some help or are just curious about how I think when I'm on location, it might be of interest to check it out. It's a PDF and you can just have it on your phone and use it like you use any app like PhotoPills. So, as always, I would highly appreciate both a like and a comment, and thank you so much for watching.